Our clocks aren't synced.
No, it's not yet.
I gotta go take a tea bag. I'll be back. Not yet, Rob.
Heard anything from the Capitol? Heard anything?
Oh, Cindy wanted to talk to you about that after the meeting.
No, that's not allowed, staying in the back.
You didn't get the white shirt.
Wait, 2 minutes yet. Aren't you gonna, you're gonna be glad and not have to, we're gonna have to come in just to harass me in October. That's all there's to it. You know? It's like, I'm gonna miss that. Okay. Okay, let's do our thing.
We're fortunate today to have Captain Acree from the Sheriff's Office here. Caleb, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the September 9, 2019 meeting of the Shawnee County Board of Commissioners. My name is Bob Archer. I currently serve as chair of the commission and represent District 3 alongside Commissioner Bill Rippon, who represents District 1, and Commissioner Kevin Cook, who represents District 2. Good morning, everyone. Morning. Before we get started, the sheriff has asked me to pull item E1. So if there's not a concern among the commissioners, we will pull item E1, and I assume it will be discussed at a later date. So, first item of business, please.
First item is item 3, consent agenda.
There are 3 items on the consent agenda. Are there questions or comments?
I'll move for approval as presented.
Second.
Motion made to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye, opposed no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item 4, new business A, County Clerk number 1, consider all voucher payments.
$248,969.92 payable to Motorola for yearly maintenance on radio communication systems for the Sheriff's Department. As of September 6th, total vouchers $1,225,593.09. And I move that we approve the vouchers.
Second.
Motion made to approve the vouchers by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye, opposed no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item A2, consider correction orders.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve the correction orders by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye, opposed no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item B, planning number 1, consider approval of resolution number 2019-70, amending the district zoning classification from RR1 Residential Reserve District to an OI1 office and institutional properties, or institutional district on property located at 3835 Northwest 43rd Street in Soldier Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Anderson, Planning Director. I'm trying to get this thing on the screen. Just can't see it. Okay. This property is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Northwest 43rd Street and Highway 75 on the south side of the street. Just to get your bearings. Oh. West Indianola Elementary School is located to the west of the property. All the properties to the north are single-family residential. There's a lot of vacant land to the south of this property. The property right now has a church on it. The church was built in 1996. It was in operation until early 2018. It's remained vacant for the last 19 months or so. One of the things that you know is that a church is allowed in all districts. So the church was a legal use. It's also very difficult when you have a church and it goes vacant to repurpose that building because they're oftentimes on the edge of a neighborhood or in the middle of a neighborhood, and you have a big parking field and a fairly large building. So there's just a limited number of uses that can go into a building of that nature and still fit in with the neighborhood. So that's the challenge that was faced by the owner of this property. It's also very undesirable to have a building remain vacant for that long because of the inherent maintenance issues with the property, the building, and you also have potential vandalism on the property and people just hanging out on the property with nobody being there most of the time. So that's the background that brings us to this point in time. Here's the end of 43rd Street. It ends right with the driveway into the church. You see the highway at the back end there. These are just some general points of reference pictures. So if you want to go back and look at any of these points in the building, you can do that. And there's also a floor plan of how they propose to repurpose the interior of the church. We can go into that in more detail. Perhaps the applicant wants to touch base with some of these details when she gives her presentation. The point I wanted to make is just get right down to the Planning Commission recommendations. This was a tough case for staff to figure out and a tough one for the commission to figure out. For the reasons I said, you really want to get somebody in that building as fast as possible, and it can't just be anybody. It has to be a use that will fit in with the neighborhood, and that's the challenge we all faced at the commission in reviewing this. The staff initially recommended approval with the 5 conditions you see above. The Planning Commission added 2 additional conditions, which came about through the public hearing part of the meeting. The first one is that the applicant would consent to immediately downzone the property to RR1 if the zoning districts are amended to allow type 2 daycares in an RR1 district. I visited with you each about a week ago to explain that there are some oddities in the permitted use sections of all the residential districts. Some things need to be added, some things be deleted. So we told the commission we would engage in that process and try to get through it in hopefully 6 to 8 months. So the commission felt like if we did that, that would take the zoning back down from O&I 1 if it was approved by the board today. And so it would essentially, that condition would be perceived by the public as limiting the impact of the zoning where somebody on property to the south could use this as a precedent for getting other O&I 1 zoning. That was a big concern of the neighborhood and the commission. We didn't want to, you have all that vacant property to the south. We didn't want to open it up where the whole property, the whole parcel could be considered as open territory for O&I zoning. So that was their attempt to mitigate that issue. The 7th condition was proposed by the applicant herself. It was basically a succession plan, where she said if the church were to be sold in some period of time before before the zoning was in place, that the sale of the church property would be limited to just a church or a daycare. So that relieves some of the concerns that some of the other O&I district uses could go in there. So basically, by these conditions, you've really tied down the potential basket of O&I uses that could go onto the property to just a daycare and a church. So the zoning would come back down in a year or so or less, and the use is limited to just those two uses by the applicant herself. So with those two conditions, the staff has continued to recommend approval of the project. The applicant, in talking with staff since then, would like you to consider these changes to two conditions, and she'll go into that herself. Basically, what she's saying is that she would like to open the daycare at 7 o'clock instead of 7:30, as we had proposed. She wanted to make sure that it was clear that building and site maintenance and other activities like parent-teacher conferences could be conducted during other operations, during other hours of operation, but not in the main business operations. So she wanted those clarified. And also, when the downzoning is completed, that the use can be expanded to more than 24 children. That would be subject to the state fire marshal approval and the state health department approving their plans and doing whatever building upgrades are necessary to put in sprinklers and other building improvements that would meet the fire and health codes of each of those organizations. So she's going to talk to those conditions. So I wanted you to understand how we got here. It was a long discussion. This is what the Planning Commission did with 6 and 7 being added, and the next page, those conditions being added. We also received 17 petitions since the Planning Commission meeting. The total area that was covered in those petitions is 17%, so it doesn't meet the 20% threshold that you need to have a unanimous vote of the matter. We have all of the maps and details about how the area was computed. If you want us to review that with you, we can. But basically, at the end of the day, the planning staff and the commission are recommending approval with subject to the 7 conditions that are listed right there before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We'll get into more detail shortly, but the conditions 6 and 7 seem to be key in this process. How are they enforceable?
They're enforceable by basically. I know it's difficult. If the succession plan is the most difficult. If you were to sell it to me and I wanted to put a permitted use in there, what's going to happen is that I would come to the planning department and say, okay, I want to put in a medical center, which is allowed in an O&I district.
Right.
Then it's up to the planning department to go, I'm sorry, you can't put that in there because this property is condition restricted. So it'd be up to the planning department to enforce it. So someone would come in hopefully before they came in for a permit, someone would do some due diligence and come to the planning department and say, okay, I want to do this, can I do it? And then we'll tell them right then. But we get to catch them before they apply for a CO also. So that's where the enforcement would come in.
Okay, I think that's true. We did get an email from the legal department to discuss the golden factors which we're going to in applying here. They've also asked us that we have public hearing and listen to the public about this issue also. So I think we'll see if the commissioners have questions for you, Randy. They have questions for the county counselor, then we'll let the applicant make their presentation, and then the people that are in support or opposed can make public comment, if that's okay with the commission. And I see our parliamentarian is shaking his head, so I'm happy camper. Commissioner Cook, anything?
Just for Randy.
Randy, please.
And I'm sure we'll address this before we take a final vote, but on item number 7, the succession plan, this is the same condition that would be available for any property anywhere within the county. The planning department always has the ability to review a zoning requirement and make recommendations to change it, to upgrade or downgrade depending upon the use or what might be happening within the county or within that area. And the county commission has the final vote. I mean, wouldn't that be the same for anything?
With condition number 7?
Yeah.
No, not
Well,
necessarily, because if somebody wants to come in there and there's if you approve this, it'll be zoned O and I1. So if somebody can come in with a permitted use in the O and I1, if it's permitted, they don't have to go to the board or the commission, they can go straight up to the planning department office and apply for a CO. So you'd only see the ones that are out of the box.
Right.
Out of the O and I box.
But, I mean, if somebody came before the planning department wanting to put in the medical center, and you said, well, no, this restriction is placed upon that it has to be either a church or a daycare,
Right,
they would then be able to file an application to change the zoning requirement
right.
to allow that, and then ultimately it would go before the planning department and then the county commission.
True. That's correct.
And whether we approve this or don't, the zoning may change at some point for this property, at some point in the future, depending
Right.
upon the use or who's making the application.
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Rippon.
Randy, I have one question. What are some of the current allowable uses for the property as it's zoned right now?
As it's zoned right now. As it's zoned right now, they can put in a sawmill, group home, a residential care facility type 1, a medical care facility type 1, a television, radio, microwave transmission tower. They can extract minerals and oil and similar materials off the property. They can put in a private airport, heliport. And my favorite is they can have a hog, dog, and vehicle racing on the property. Some of those will require a conditional use permit, and a couple of those are allowed by right, but you get the idea that there are several things in there. That's why, because there's some oddball things in there that probably shouldn't be in there, that are inappropriate in any RR1 district, we're looking at the whole thing in its entirety, and that was the genesis of condition number 6. Because there's a lot of things in there that I wouldn't want as a neighbor in my backyard.
Okay. Other questions? Why don't we hear from the applicant?
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Luttrell, and I'm the owner and operator of Lighthouse Day School. We are currently located inside a Seaman Community Church, and I've been in business for 9 years. I take care of children the ages of 3 to 5. We are currently licensed for 24 children by KDHE, but I do know that Shawnee County has a humongous need for quality childcare and preschool services, and we were looking to expand. As we were looking on the way for expansion, we thought, we saw the building, and it's been about a year in the making, and with talking back and forth, we thought we'd try the rezoning. We're sad that it's not already in an RR1, that we could have a daycare facility type 2, and we were pretty much forced to, not forced, but we were recommended to try for rezoning. This is a lengthy process, and I have collected a few things that I think are important. I know that there's opposition by the neighborhood and that they're worried about what could come in should I fold or, God forbid, something happen to me. For me, it is important that it would remain a childcare or a church. And I would be consenting to writing something down and have a succession plan, which I've been working with the city, go to PICA with that program to establish that so that the neighborhood doesn't have to worry about it. I wanted to bring to your attention that recently, both by KSNT and WIBW, we've had, and I printed some of that out, we've had some newscast coverage about the lack of quality care in Shawnee County. And as it stands at the moment, there are 9,000 children in Shawnee County alone that are needing care that we're not providing for. KDHE and the fire marshal both regulate how many children I can have. And the building permits, the building size permits 48, and the fire marshal's recommendations were that if I wanted to have 48 children, I needed to have a code footprint drawn and fire systems installed, which I will do if this is what it takes, if the zoning gets approved. I'm looking for a number of 30. I'm not looking for a number 48 or 50, but 30 for me, and zoning said 24. 24 is not really a good number if you consider that I have property taxes to pay, that I have a mortgage to pay, and I have qualified staff that I hire. So I also looked around and went on the KDHE website and looked how many home daycares are up in the 66618 district. And I found that there are 15 home daycares in the close vicinity that are all pretty much full or are licensed to at least 10. So the neighborhood had opposition to the traffic or parking in the street. As far as I see it, the property comes with 60 parking lots, and we would park on the property, parents would park on the property itself. On the other hand, I don't have a drop-in daycare, which means that parents cannot come and drive there at all hours of the day. They have to be there by 8:30, that's the latest, or no child will be accepted, and they have to be gone by 5:30, meaning that there isn't a coming and going of traffic during the day. That's just something that we don't allow because it disrupts the teaching moments. So what I am asking you today is to revisit point 2, with thinking about limiting me to 24, because that is really a very small number considering the fact that ABC Learning Center across the street is licensed for 106. I'm not looking to blow this place out of the water, so to speak, as far as the size is concerned, but I'm wanting to be good neighborly, and I want the neighbors to understand that this is something that I would be willing to stand back and say, if what you need is that I downzone, as soon as it's approved, that type 2 daycare facility can go in RR1. I have no problem downzoning again. Any questions?
Questions from Ms. Woodruff?
I do not have any.
No.
No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to hear from anyone who is in favor of the rezoning of the property.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ralph Crubbins. I live at 3934 Northwest Morley, so I'm within about a block and a half, 2 blocks of this facility. I'm all in favor of doing this. I know there's some concerns about if this daycare were to go away, what would happen to the property, who would move in there. But I'm very much in favor of it because otherwise this property is going to stand empty. It's a big parking lot. Building needs maintenance. We need the daycare in that area. I don't think the traffic, we used to have a church there. Nobody ever complained about how much traffic there was. The church, of course, never got zoning as far as I understand, so they just went ahead and built themselves, and now we have this empty building. So I'm very much in favor of doing this. I think from what I understand, these folks are very qualified to run this facility. They have experience. They have a certain drop-off time, a certain pickup time. They're very, very responsible. And rather than this building just sitting there, I'm thinking this would be a perfect application for this building. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in support of the rezoning?
Good morning. My name is Ben Johnston. I live at 3607 Southeast 22nd Terrace. It's in 66605. So we live quite a ways from the building in question. My 3 children went to Lighthouse at the Seaman Congregation Church, first in 2013, then in 2016, And then our last child is in kindergarten this fall, so we just completed our last year. I am definitely in favor of this. Ms. Suzanne has a wonderful teaching style. She helped our kids, prepare for kindergarten. She starts each year with a whole section on community, so they learn about police, about fire departments, they learn about the court system. So she really does a good job at taking the first step to creating good, citizens of Kansas, citizens of America. She teaches through doing, through getting messy. I would agree with the former comments about being very strict and rigid. I'm not the most punctual person in the world, and I've received several texts, don't be late, you'll be on time, pick up your kid on time, and she'll fine parents for not being on time or for being late. So, yeah, I don't see parking really being an issue with the way Ms. Suzanne runs the school. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else?
My name's Corey Shipley, and I'm a current neighbor of the daycare that Miss Luttrell is currently directing. And when I say neighbor, I mean on the other side of the fence, literally. And I have found, we've connected up with them a number of times, just an incredibly quality daycare process, good business sense, and I rather appreciate that very much in our community. But at the same time, in looking through this, I am all in favor of her expanding. In fact, I wish she would almost keep both of them. But nevertheless, because I have a child there, but not in the daycare, but my kid loves to play with the kids next door on occasion. But I would also recommend removing the limitation of 24 kids. As Ms. Luttrell has requested in her former statement, on the basis that her intention in all of this has been to expand her current capacity, which 24 is our current capacity. Now, we acknowledge that that in the stipulations that in the stipulations that they're trying to accommodate the zoning difficulties, they've, in essence, agreed in number 7 to allow her to have the 48 kids with the stipulation that it reverts down to RR1, which seems to me that if they're willing to approve the 48 kids with the OI1 or with the residential zoning and not with the other, I think that's a little awkward myself. So I would recommend passing of this, but I would see very easily removing that 24 restriction. And from everything that I see as a neighbor, this would be a perfect replacement for the previous church building as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments in support of the rezoning? Now I'd like to open to anyone who is opposed to the rezoning.
My name's Steve Seahorn. I represent several individuals. I have copies of my ideas if you'd like. I live at 3821 Northwest Morley Court, which is directly north of the property in question. I also happen to be president of Woodgate Homeowners Association, which many of the homeowners who have concerns live in that association. We have several concerns. Our concerns deal with the rezoning, not necessarily with the use by the daycare. First, one concern is that the established residential property owners have invested in residential, not in a commercial area. When we purchased our property, none of the homes either adjacent or near to this property were located in any commercial zoning nearby. It was all residential or agricultural. So our knowledge in the purchase of our properties was not with commercial property nearby affecting our property. Also, our residential property owners have made large personal investments in the construction, maintenance, and improvement of our properties with the expectation of a long-term permanent residential neighborhood, not a commercially zoned neighborhood. The injection, we believe, or insertion of commercial zoning in our established residential community could negatively affect our property values potentially and diminish long-term investments in those properties that we have been making for some of us for decades. The resale of our residential properties, if that were to occur, could result in an effective loss, financial loss, due to the undesirability of someone wanting to purchase property near a commercial zoning. Additionally, the rezoning for limited commercial use will permit new owners of the property to resell the property in the future to anyone of a variety of uses, which has already been brought forward. Now, the restriction that has been mentioned, that if someone wanted to purchase that property in the future, that could be rezoned. Even with the restriction, it would be presented to the Planning Commission, Planning Department. Planning Department then could change or waive the restrictions that are present on that property. And so having the restrictions put in place, which would be nice at this time, does not mean that that will have a permanent effect in the future. And so we're concerned about that. And many of the potential uses, which were mentioned earlier, could have a negative effect on the quality of life for the residents in that neighborhood. And so we're concerned about the rezoning. The rezoning of the property in question for limited commercial use also will permit the future resale of this property for potentially undesirable applications, which we've already mentioned. The rezoning for commercial use at this time would make it easier to rezone the property in the future for other types of commercial use, for more aggressive or wider-ranging commercial uses. The rezoning of this property for commercial uses will likely lead to efforts to rezone adjacent properties also for commercial purposes, thus further deteriorating the neighborhood lifestyle of the residential area and posing new and additional problems for the families and children in the area. Traffic flow has been mentioned. Our concern for traffic flow is not parking on the street by the daycare. There's plenty of parking in the parking lot, obviously. And that has not ever been one of our arguments. One of our concerns is the traffic flow congestion that takes place along Brickyard Road, which is currently congested due to the activity associated with West Indianola Grade School. During normal business hours, cars line the street. For folks who haven't been on Brickyard or even 43rd Street at times, are not familiar with the congestion that takes place there. That two-lane street frequently is difficult for one-lane passage because of the amount of traffic that takes place there. It's difficult to navigate. Rezoning this property, our concern for commercial use will only increase the traffic load with non-residential traffic. People are not just bringing their kids, dropping them off school, picking them up, or going to school events, but who are hurrying to work. And that concerns us from individuals who are not located in our neighborhoods. The residential streets that access the proposed rezoning property are not designed to carry commercial traffic. Brickyard Road and Northwest 43rd Street are two-lane roads with ditches. There's no place to walk along those streets unless you're on the street, for example. There's no place to pull off comfortably if there is congestion because it's just not drivable. That doesn't allow for the increased road traffic for children who are playing or riding bicycles, for pedestrians who walk with their kids, who walk or jog for exercise, who walk their pets. In addition, Northwest Morley Street will be more than likely used as a shortcut from the north to avoid the busy intersection at Brickyard and 43rd Street, thus increasing hazardous conditions on this residential side street. As was mentioned earlier, 17 property owners filed protest petitions, so nearly 40% of the property owners, not the property mass, but the property owners, within the 1,000-foot notification area, filed those petitions. And though we did not meet the 20% requirement, which was brought to our attention, due to a few large properties in the area, especially to the immediate south of the property in question, so that we were unable to enforce the restrictions of the protest petition. The petitioners represent a significant opposition to the rezoning question. I want to make clear, we are not opposed to putting it to daycare. Okay, we're not opposed to daycare. Daycare serve good purposes, offer good assistance to families. But once this property is rezoned, once it is rezoned, that cannot be, it won't be undone. It won't be undone. It will only become more aggressive, if anything. So that brings me to my last thought here, that once a property is rezoned, it likely will never return to its original zoning classification. It is more likely to be rezoned for broader uses. In this case, a daycare would seem to have a noble purpose and some might believe be a desirable business, as Ralph indicated and some others. Ralph is a neighbor, by the way. And, but daycares, like churches, can close or relocate because they desire to expand again. Already, the expansion issue has been brought forward. And so if they want to expand again, they will be closing those doors and relocating to a different property that offers more space or convenience. And when that happens, there will be efforts to rezone this property once again. And it won't be residential rezoning that is being pursued. It will be a more aggressive commercial rezoning. And so as demographics change, so will the business application of the rezoned property. And we've paid property taxes for many years, and now we're facing little control and a greatly restricted influence on the community in which we have invested. And we would appreciate consideration for our investments, as well as the investments of daycare, their interests, but of our investments and our lifestyles. Do you have any questions for me?
Are there questions? Just Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
The property has sat vacant for 15 months.
Yes.
What impact has that had on the neighborhood with people maybe coming down, using the parking lot, or the building deteriorating, or maybe inviting undesirable activity?
Well, really none that I've observed.
Okay.
I live right across the dead-end street from it. I started saying across the street there, right behind it, adjacent to it. Another homeowner, Rob Moore, also does, and some others live right across the street from us. We haven't really observed any negative activity. The Sheriff's Department will come down periodically and meet down there to, do their reports and other things, take a break. They're good about doing that. Periodically, so cars will come down to the end of that street and turn around and go back. Once in a while, maybe there'll be a car there in the evening, which I suspect is a couple teenagers, maybe getting to know each other, having a nice conversation, visit. Haven't gone over to investigate that, but very, very little activity. Really, the only activity that takes place there is those who arrive in the property to maintain it.
When the building was
And it is in good repair.
when the building was being used as a church, what
Yes.
was the impact of the traffic in the neighborhood?
The traffic was limited to very specific times.
Tuesday evening, Saturday evening.
Yeah, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, basically. They had, Yes.
Only from the speaker.
Yes.
You each have your turn.
but there was periodic, regular scheduled meetings that they held. And there was quite a bit of traffic flow, but we had no control over that because it was not required for rezoning. But it's an unhandy location because there's very limited access. So there is only one way in, which is 43rd Street, or off of Morley Street, which is spurs off of 43rd Street.
But when it was being used as a church, there was traffic on regular periods of time and,
Yes, non-business hours generally.
okay. And then, as a homeowner, the president of the homeowners association, if this was to become a residential development, if you were looking at a apartment complex of 100 apartments, that would be a use that would be available as a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, there's some things we have control over, some things we don't. You know, I mean, if we have no control over it, we have no control over it. So we have no, there isn't anything we can do about it. But the rezoning is something, once that becomes rezoned, then we lose more, I don't know if control is the right word, but now it can become more problematic for us.
So the main concern is not what's happening today, but what might happen in the future.
Certainly. A concern is some of the traffic that will be incurred now. But certainly what could happen in the future, if this takes place, is a great concern of ours because it can turn into who knows what. We can't see the future. It might be a very negligible effect, but it could be a major effect. And rezoned, and then later on, the planning commission decide, well, yes, we can go ahead and rezone this for something else because there's been no real bad issue here, and proceed from there. We, in our experience with the planning commission, most recently, we're not certain that we have much hearing there, and that they will do as they see fit. And it may not fit us. And that's a major concern that we have, yes.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've studied the conditions carefully, and I think what you're saying is that conditions 6 and 7 don't provide you enough assurance that there won't be problems in the future.
Absolutely correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely correct, yes. Yes. Although I must admit that as I hear the conditions read, sometimes I don't follow all your lingo. But primarily, yes, that's our concern.
Okay.
That could change. As one of you questioned, the planning department, the enforcement of conditions, the enforcement is reliant upon basically the planning department. And if the planning department decides not to enforce, then the enforcement goes away.
Well, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, well,
I don't see that happening.
well, I would hope not, but
Okay.
I've seen other things happen that I would hope wouldn't happen too.
Good point. Commissioner Rippon, any questions?
I have one question. When does the grade school start?
The grade school
I mean, time.
time, I believe 9 o'clock in the morning. I think 9 o'clock is what time the grade school, buses start arriving parents' buses arrive around anywhere from 8:15, 8:30 on if they have early activities. School concludes around 4-ish, and so it's at the drop-off times for the daycare and the times of arrival and departure for school match quite well. And it's just a heavily, heavily congested area. It's not designed, for the cars. It's just not designed for the cars. As residents, we avoid that, but non-residents won't, because they will drive it.
Thank you for your
Okay.
comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to express opposition?
Hi, my name's Rob Mercer. I'm actually his neighbor to the east. My property backs up to what was 43rd Street is now grass. I maintain that street or grass. I mow it, with my yard. And I just want to reiterate the fact that everything he said was true, but the neighborhood it would be unsafe. In many levels, it would be unsafe. When the church was there, they had maybe 40 cars coming on a Tuesday night when all the families are already in their homes. It's getting dark. They're there for an hour, maybe two, then they leave. Like he said, they had meetings during the day when everybody's at work. It was very convenient for our neighborhood. We never even knew they were there most of the time. As far as traffic going in and out of there, my bedroom window faces that church across the street, the grass, right? And I know when there's a car over there, I know when there's people over there. And like he said, the only people that ever come over there are people that are mowing the yard or going in to maintain something, and one or two cars. Never have traffic, never have flow. Now, again, with the traffic going through the neighborhood, a lot of the cars on Morley Street, which is what he said is true, they will eventually use it as a shortcut, or because of the traffic from the school being parked in the street, because they do line up Brickyard, bumper to bumper, dropping their kids off. They will take our street, Morley Street, to avoid that. And there's probably 10 houses in that neighborhood that park their cars on the street. So when you're going down that street, there's one lane in between, one way. People's coming the other direction, you've got to get over and let them through. So you increase that by 60 cars a day, there's going to be problems. Plus the people that walk their dogs in the morning, kids that ride their bikes to school. It's concerning on my part that when we went to this planning meeting, everybody was okay with the stipulations that was set. And now we show up and it's already changed. She wants in to go at 7 instead of 7:30. She wants to have 48 kids instead of 24. So they based everything that she wanted then, and now it's changed already. So now you change, you rezone it, and what's going to change next? She's going to want to expand the building and have 60 kids? I think it's snowballing. And I think that everybody should understand that, again, this is a residential neighborhood with kids, with animals that walk the streets, because there is no sidewalks. You have to walk in the middle of the street because it's ditches on both sides of a one-lane street. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Debbie Studdard. I live at 3820 Northwest Morley Court. These are my neighbors directly across. One of your concerns was the time of day for what the school starts. It's not just when the school starts. They have a after-school program before and after school. It's the Boys and Girls Club. So the traffic starts at 7 in the morning, and then they stay till 5 or 5:30 at night after school. So the kids are being watched in the morning and in the afternoon as far as the traffic goes. As far as the building being empty, I know that it could be turned into a house. Everybody complains about or says something about the parking lot. They turned out on Topeka Boulevard, there was a restaurant there. They've turned that into a house. It could be turned into a house. The church just needs to lower the price of what they're asking for the building. That's the big problem. Before, they wanted to put in a party center, and that person didn't go through with it because he knew that we all were going to fight that hard. It's not the daycare. I heard the daycare lady is very nice. I heard she's very good at what she does. It's not a personal thing from us as the neighborhood. It is, as they said, the traffic, the roads. My house burnt down July 31st of 2011. So I rebuilt right where we was because we love our neighbors. Some of us have been neighbors, including Ralph, for over 30 years. And we have a good neighborhood. It's not that we think she's going to make the neighborhood bad. It's what the rezoning will do in the future. So it could be turned into a house. There's houses, there's a farmer that's got longhorns. It could be turned into a house. They're not using that as Nobody's ever put that out there, that it could be something besides a business. Any questions?
Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the commission on this issue?
I don't want to address, but I just want to
No,
acknowledge.
I mean, please.
I just said,
You have to.
I think you just
have to
did.
sorry. I'm Rebecca Mercer. I'm also the neighbor right behind. And the traffic is an issue. It's already an issue. Because of the school, because every child can have from 1 to 4 parents involved in that one child's life on a daily basis, maybe more, in our environment we live in today. So you're not just talking about 2 parents per one child. And so we see that with the grade school. You would see it with the daycare. They mentioned the ABC daycare across the highway by the Petro. Our young son, when he was young, went there. That traffic was a nightmare. That's what you couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. There were kids walking that would walk right out in the traffic. That would happen in this situation. And none of us want an unsafe situation for anyone. They mentioned the curbing. It's not just that the street ends. They are deep ditches. So you can't just walk off the side of the road anyway safely, because it's a ditch. A big ditch, other than where the houses are on the one side. So I think we have valid concerns for everyone, not just our children and the adults that walk their dogs, or the mothers that are pushing their new babies in the carts going up and down that street, because it's a lot of traffic. But it's also the traffic of the people coming that would be the concern. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else? Can we have the county count? Oh, go right ahead.
My name's Ron Ward, and I live at 3810 Northwest Morley Court. These are my neighbors. I'm kind of in agreement with Steve Seahorn, reiterate what he said. And really, I don't have any problem with the daycare center per se. I am wondering if it's rezoned, if the daycare folds up or something, can the rezoning revert back to what it is now?
And that's, from what I understand, that is provision number 6.
That would be my concern.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Thank you
pretty
for
much
your
all I
comments.
have.
If there's no one else, I'd ask the county councilor to briefly discuss what the role of the county commission is in this process and the options that we have.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Kraus, Shawnee County Councilor. Yes, before we do that, let me make one recommendation, that when you vote to close the public hearing, you also make a motion to accept all of the testimony and information you've received this morning as part of that public hearing, and then close it. Then you will have 3 general options before you this morning legally. First option is accept the application as presented with the 7 conditions that were noted by our planning staff. So that's option 1. Option 2, let's see, I'll go the other. Option 2 is to modify those conditions as requested by the applicant, to enlarge the time for drop-off to 7 a.m. and the other information in red listed there, and to expand the number of children that can be allowed as to up to 48 and/or what would be allowed by both Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Fire Marshal, and any other regulatory agencies that would apply to it. That's option 2, to expand upon the conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission. And option 3 is to deny the application and request. If you do so, we will have to prepare written reasons for the denial and send that back to the Planning Commission for further action. So those are your 3 general options at this point. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Other questions for the council? Yes. Commissioner Cook?
Jim, can you go through with us and really talk to us legally about the enforceability of number 7, which would be the reversionary if it's no longer being used as a daycare or a church? How enforceable really is that?
Well, it's enforceable to the extent that those conditions would be in the record, and our planning staff would be aware of the conditions, and we would defend that if a lawsuit were filed against the county to try to remove those conditions.
So if an individual wanted to open a restaurant at that location, if the daycare was to close at some future point and they decide that they would rather have a restaurant there, obviously that would be a completely different type of use. Or if it was a OA, a tax accountant, and maybe they're going to have people coming and going and doing their taxes all day long. Those would also go before the planning department as to, and that would be not limited, or that would not be an accepted use.
Correct.
But they could ask for an application to have that changed.
Like the point you made earlier, that can happen now.
So no land is ever locked in forever, that it can only be used for this use in perpetuity.
Correct.
I don't have anything else.
Commissioner Rippon, any questions for the
None.
county councilor?
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and then have discussion among the commission.
Second.
Motion made to close the public hearing by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Thoughts? Proposal. Personally, this is a difficult, very difficult case. On the one hand, I think abandoned property deteriorates. I know it's not bad now, but it's gonna be bad. I think our health department has told us over and over again, we need new daycare. We've got a lot of people that require daycare. And I'm looking at the golden factors, and one of the most important is the recommendations of a permanent or a professional planning staff. And our planning department has essentially proposed that this rezoning occur. On the other hand, I think that the proposed amendments are significant. I think the proposed changes are so significant that we may want to disapprove this resolution and send it back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration. I'm most concerned about if the business does not succeed, what happens? What happens, and we are, I think, setting a precedent if we rezone now without further strengthening 6 and 7 provisions, that we would be making a mistake. So my view is to disapprove and send back to the Planning Commission for further discussion. Like I say, this is a very, very difficult item, but that's my thoughts on it. Commissioners? Jump all over it.
I look at the hours of operation, and with the proposed amendment, actually, where it's proposed to go to 7 o'clock, could possibly alleviate some of the problems with traffic, and that you're stretching out the time periods where people could be dropped off. And I also understand, you know, if it was a church, they could have whatever hours they want, and you could have the same amount of traffic with a church as you do a daycare center. I do like the stipulations that were put on, that they would revert back to being a church or a daycare. That really doesn't bother me. I realize most of you are not opposed to the daycare, and you're not opposed to this lady doing that. But it is a change of zoning, and it's a difficult decision. I don't know. But you're suggesting it go back
Yes.
for,
Quickly for reconsideration of the applicant's proposals and to strengthen any language that we can to give the neighbors assurance that it would not turn into an unacceptable use in that property. That's my proposal. Commissioner Cook, your thoughts from an attorney standpoint?
Well, I think that, you know, as the county councilor's already talked about, any use that we put as a restriction, that will go before the planning commission. Uses change as developments change, as businesses change. But this would ensure that the neighborhood would have the restrictions that they're asking for. It would give the protection for the neighborhood as written for number 7. I would note that there is a typographical error, that it should read church or instead of church of daycare. And that's in paragraph number 7. But as far as paragraph number 6, adding the amendment to allow for more than 24, daycares are not, I've served as the chair of a daycare advisory board for almost 17 years. Or over 17 years, and daycares are not huge profit centers. They do operate, and so having 24 children may not be enough of a profit center for them to be able to operate and pay their staff and overhead and taxes. Also, there are changes with Kansas Department of Health and Environment as things change and develop, but having the restrictions that it would be subject to the licensing and permitting of the fire marshal, Department of Health and Environment, the Shawnee County Planning Department, the Shawnee County Health Agency. And what you're doing is you're putting 5 different, you've got the state regulations, you've got county regulations, you have the state through both the fire and the Department of Health and Environment, you have the county through the health department and through planning. That would allow the applicant to make those applications if they want to expand from 24 to a larger number, but it would not expand the footprint of the facility. The facility's footprint would still stay the same. The hours of limited to 7 a.m. to 5:30. I think that does address the traffic flow. I think what you'll find is that most parents are going to be dropping off their children before 7:30 or at 7:30 if they're to be at work by 8. And so I know that as the parent of a daycare, of a child that was in daycare, we would often drop off our child before or at 7:30 so that my wife and I would be able to be at work by 8 o'clock or before. We were often picking up at, by 5:15 right after we get off work so that we'd be all home by 5:30. That's just the way families operate in today's world. Employers expect you to be at work by 8, and they expect you to work till 5. That's just the way life is. And being able to have a daycare center that would allow you to drop off your child and maintain employment, that's what we want in Shawnee County. And so I would be fine with both of the amendments made. to number 3 and number 6, and I think that we have as much of a view, and I don't think that sending it back to the planning commission and is going to result in any more discussion or any other enlightenment than we have right here. We sit as the final decider, and so I would ask that we make a motion that we propose we approve the application with the 2 amendments today. And that's a motion.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
What would we hope to get by sending it back? What kind of, what,
Well, a further discussion of the applicant's changes.
okay,
I think they're significant enough that they should be discussed, and if we had better assurance in how that language would be as far as the neighbors, that their property would be protected. That's my rationale for sending it back to the planning commission. Again, this isn't easy.
it isn't. I don't really see it really as a negative for the neighborhood. I'm just not seeing that. I don't see it as much different than a church, and we do have a significant lack of daycare facilities in this county, and there's probably a significant lack in your area. And
I think that was the second to the motion.
I think I'll second it.
Motion made to approve the resolution as, including the applicant's proposed amendments made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no, and I say no. Motion carries 2-1. Commissioner Archer dissents. Next item, please. I will, let's take 2 minutes if people want to exit.
Was that with the 30 kids or 24?
As the amendments.
As the amendment.
As amended.
Okay, 24.
24, but with,
No.
if there's to be an expansion, it has to go through, it's your amendment. It says 20.
They accepted her requested amendment.
Yes.
For 30.
Yes.
Well, whatever KDHE and the fire marshal approved.
Okay.
To the limits of what?
I actually like that restriction. Yeah, you have 4 entities deciding.
Yes.
We need a new resolution.
What's
We'll
that?
need a new resolution.
Yeah, we'll submit it.
Okay, we need to get started with the rest of our business. Looks like we've got one shift leaving and one coming in. Next item, please.
Item C, Parks and Recreation. Number 1, consider approval of request for project budgets. A, renovation of field number 1 at Dornwood Park at a cost of $96,455, with $56,000 in funding from the 2015 COP funds and $40,455 from the operating funds. And B, 3 umbrella shade structures and an open-air shelter at the Midwest Health Aquatic Facility at a cost of $53,653 from the 2015 COP funds.
Good morning, Commissioner. Sean Osborne, Parks and Recreation. The item before you basically has been in progress for the last year or so. We've been looking at different things and trying to utilize the COP funds. If you'll indulge me just a little bit, I do have a slide presentation. If this will. The first project, which is the Dornwood Park improvements, the field number 1 that you see, this is the one that you're coming in. As you're coming into Dornwood, you'd be looking to your left. This is the first one that a lot of people see as they come into the complex, and we're looking to do the updates that we had done in the past at the 2 other previous fields, which would be taking out the turf and all of that and redoing the sod, redoing the fence, putting in the nets. And I like this one because it actually gives us another complex to work along with the Lake Shawnee Girls and the Bettis complex as well, in such close proximity to probably bring in bigger tournaments as we've seen in the past. Some of the stuff that we would do, I kind of touched on. New irrigation in there. We did put some new red shell on the diamond that would be south of this diamond as well. That was some of the improvements that we did. And some of the money we would utilize from operating budget as well, and it wouldn't just come from the COP. And then at the Midwest Health Aquatic Center, we're looking at putting in an open-air shelter. This would lend itself to having birthday parties, giving the complex a place where patrons could be in the shade as well. And we're also looking at putting in these cantilever umbrellas. Where these would go, we can get to that next slide. As you can see in this section, they would go just in this area. This is where the open air shelter, and this is where the cantilevers would go in this area to provide shade out at Midwest. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on both projects.
And those are right near the kiddie pool, which
Exactly,
makes
yes.
sense, I guess. Questions or comments for Sean?
And again, these are using up funds left over from the COP.
Yeah, and the department has talked with Betty Griner on utilizing the funds for the COP, and I think she's very excited about us using this since they've been on there since 2015.
Other comments?
Shade is critical around pools, so.
This does get us closer to completion of Dornwood, and so.
Absolutely.
I'll move approval of the project budget.
I'll second that.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye, opposed no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sean. Next item, please.
Item D, Public Works, number 1, consider approval of request to award bid to Independent Salt Company for 5,000 tons of de-icing salt for snow and ice removal operations at a total cost of $270,550, excuse me, with funding from the operating budget.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Niehaus, Director of Public Works. I really hate to talk about it, but I have to talk about the winter of 2019 and 2020. And as part of our preparations for that winter, we need to start buying snow removal materials. And the first of those materials the most important is salt, de-icing salt. We typically order 4,000 tons, but as you remember, last winter was a bear for snow removal, and we've depleted our resources to the point where we want to add another 1,000 tons for this coming winter. 3 bids were received, and we've gone with what we feel is the lowest, most responsive bid. If we buy the full 5,000 tons, we will expend approximately $270,000. This is not a problem. This is budgeted. With your questions, I await.
It might be a problem if we have another winter like we had last winter. Questions for Kurt? Motion.
Move that we approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Next item, please.
Item E has been pulled. Item F, Commission number 1, consider canceling the September 23rd and October 3rd commission meetings.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 3-0. Yes, Randy?
We have an item coming up on October 3rd. Is that the Monday?
October 3rd is a
We have an item coming out of the Planning Commission
Okay.
for a meeting on that day. It's a CUP, so it was public notice, a public hearing that was published.
Yes, and we'll have to delay that. And I think the
Okay.
county council, you need to talk to the county councilor about the process to do that, please. Okay, next item, please.
Item 5, Administrative Communications.
This is an opportunity for department heads, any member of the public to address the commission.
Thank you. My name is Carol Marple. I am here to give an update on how the protest petition is coming. We are still in limbo, waiting for an advisory opinion from the county councilor, Mr. Kroll. Mr. Kroll has 5 days in which to respond. I submitted the request last Wednesday, 5 business days. Any signatures that we obtain before Mr. Kroll issues his opinion, we run the risk of being declared void. I would ask that the people that have offered to help or sign, please be patient with us. The 30 days that we have to gain these signatures will end September 25th. We have a great group of people impatiently waiting to start getting signatures. I say we because people like Clark Trammell has offered his help with organization and collecting signatures. We have someone who has offered to print the signature sheets for free. We have a notary who has offered her services to notarize the signature pages. There is a growing list of people offering to collect signatures. We are contacting businesses to allow us to collect signatures in front of their businesses. Because we have such a short amount of time, it is going to be hard to go house to house to collect signatures. We will be announcing places and hours where we will be collecting signatures all over the county as soon as we hear from Mr. Kroll. I want to state a few facts that I will say many times over about this petition. Fact. Commissioners Archer and Rippon voted to approve a $10 million family park that will be built on 21st and Urish Road. 2 people voted to spend $10 million of our tax dollars. Unless we can get this on the ballot, this park will be built. If we get it on the ballot, the family park may still be built, but it will be built by a majority of the voters, not 2 people. Fact, this $10 million park will in some way affect every man, woman, and child in Shawnee County and the city of Topeka. Since I have the floor and I have no 4-minute time limit, I want to get on my soapbox for a minute. I have heard many comments of, my vote doesn't mean anything. And I have to say, yes, it does. Yes, we probably don't see a real difference in the national election. We don't see much of a difference in even the state of Kansas election. Our votes is just one in millions of votes. But let's talk about the local election. We have control here. There are 109,203 registered voters in this county. We need 5% of this number, or 5,460 signatures, to put this on the ballot. If you want to sign this petition and are not a registered voter, we can help you get registered when you come to sign the petition. Let's all take a minute and reflect why we should vote. Voting is not a privilege. It is not a given right. I am sure each and every person knows someone who lost their life or suffered a horrific injury in a war. They did this so we can be free, and that includes being able to vote the way we choose. I cannot think of a better way than thanking them than exercising your right to vote. Again, this petition is not asking you to vote yes or no on this $10 million park. It is just asking to put the question on the ballot so we can vote. You will have the choice then whether to vote yes or no. Just an observation. I know many of the ladies in the room, we have a lot of representatives from the League of Women Voters. Maybe it's an omen that they're here today, because I think our goal is the same thing, getting people to vote. And that's what this petition hopes to do. Please put your signature on this petition. and if you have some time to spare to help us collect signatures, that would be great. I greatly thank the media who has helped us get the word out about this petition. I want to thank you again. My name again is Carol Marple, and my phone number is 785-221-2306. Thank you again very much.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Jim Crowell, Shawnee County Counselor. I want to correct the record. My office received the petition on Thursday at around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, not on Wednesday. The duty of my office under the law is to review the information carefully to make sure that it is correctly identified as required by the law. This is a highly technical area of the law, and if you don't believe me, start looking at the cases. In all of the number of cases that have been through our court systems on different petition drives that have had defects in them or raised issues that have been challenged later on. The law gives my office 5 business days to review this. I don't know if we'll need the entire 5 business days, but we are going to carefully review the petition and review the requirements that are often updated by the legislature every year. We want to make sure we have the current requirements, and then we will respond, and my office will respond within the statutory time required. Thank you.
Just what we would expect. Thank you, Jim.
My name is Carol Marple again. I do not have it on my person, but I will be happy to go out into my car and get it. I have the date stamped petition where it came to your office on Wednesday afternoon.
It's on my desk, Carol.
Well, but you said I didn't get it until Thursday. I got it in. No, sir. I'll go get it. I also made the comment on Thursday at the county commission meeting that I had turned in the petition. So I will, when this meeting adjourns, go out and get it.
I can assure you we will abide by the provisions of the law. Anyone else to address the commission?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kathleen Marker, and I am the CEO of the YWCA Northeast Kansas. The YWCA advocates for all citizens to be civically engaged. And we know that civic engagement influences individuals' health and the well-being of all of our community. According to the Kansas Health Foundation, active, engaged community members help to shape policy, express needs and expectations, and determine how resources are allocated and elect their representatives. In order for all citizens to fully participate in the voting process, we need to make voting accessible to all citizens. To encourage more Kansans to be civically engaged is an investment in Shawnee County. The result is improved health outcomes for residents and a healthy, vibrant community for all. As our city moves forward to be more inclusive of all citizens of Topeka, Shawnee County needs to join this effort. Accessibility to weekend voting will afford citizens, whether they work 2 jobs or work in hourly positions or have other socioeconomic challenges, one less barrier to civic engagement. So I hope that you will consider weekend voting through Shawnee County.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Vicki Arnett. I'm president of the League of Women Voters, Topeka, Shawnee County. The League encourages informed and active participation in government, works to understand public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League has a proud 99-year history of being nonpartisan, neither supporting or opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. One issue of vital concern we share with our partners and with the Board of County Commissioners is low voter turnout in all elections and dismal turnout in local elections. The League supports increasing election office, early voting, weekend hours as one small method to increase voter turnout by addressing the structural barriers to voting. As we all are aware, the electorate has changed. Potential voters are younger and more racially and ethnically diverse than ever before in our history. We believe that all elected and appointed officials have a responsibility to respond to the unique needs of this new electorate. Extending early voting hours to weekends is just one step in allowing those with work, transportation, school, family, or child care complications to vote. Recently, the Board of Commissioners heard of the Shawnee County Health Department's plans to extend immunization clinic hours in order to increase the immunization rate. The League and our partners believe the same families will gain access to voting through extended early voting hours. As the League celebrates our centennial year, enthusiasm is building for the work of the League and our partners. The League is on target to register record numbers of voters through community and school-based voter registration drives. Our centennial celebration recognizes the past, celebrates the present, and looks to the future. As we look to the future, our League has sponsored 2 Shawnee County secondary educators who will be teaching civics engagements in new ways with the goal of increasing participation of young people into the future in the civic life. I'd like to introduce a couple of our partners from the YWCA advocacy. Ronnie Padilla, and from LULAC, past president of LULAC, Kim Montoya, who is the director of the YWCA Advocacy Project, and Darcella Goodman, who is the Topeka NAACP president. And if anybody needs any assistance registering to vote, I can help you, or anybody with a League name tag can help you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else to address the commission?
Good morning, Commissioners. Kellen Seitz, Spectre Venue Management and the Stormont Vale Event Center. I thought everybody might use a bit of good news this morning. We are very excited that the Topeka Pilots hockey team is back and their season starts on Friday. So with that, a lot of the renovation projects as well as upgrades that consumers and patrons can see are being delivered every day. One of the biggest ones that we will see is after the first home stand is the seating conversion that takes place inside the arena. So every single seat in that arena will be remanufactured, and brand new seats will be put in starting September the 17th. So we are very excited about that and invite all the Shawnee County patrons to come out and enjoy a hockey game in the new comfortable larger seats and a lot of the other amenities that are going into the facility as well. So happy to answer any questions on any of that.
See none. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Sean Osborne, Parks and Recreation. Just wanted to bring attention, it's the 24th annual Great Topeka Duck Race. Will take place this Saturday at Lake Shawnee. Festivities start at 11 a.m. and the ducks will enter the water at 3 p.m. And you can get all the info from their Facebook site as well. So.
Thanks, Sean. Anyone else for the address of the commission? Seeing none, Commissioner Cook.
Last week, there was the event sponsored by the Greater Topeka Partnership, the Turning Point, which was at the Capitol Plaza Manor Conference Center. I'll let Commissioner Rippon talk about that. I won't steal his thunder, but I did have the privilege of attending. It was a good experience. I would note that on Wednesday, we do have a JADO meeting. There's quite a bit to be discussed. Commissioner Archer, this will be your last JADO meeting. I hope you appreciate it and relish it, you know.
You don't know how thrilled I am to be approaching my last JADO meeting. Commissioner Ripa,
But,
anything?
but I do have
Oh,
one-
I'm sorry, Commissioner Cook.
I have been speaking with and working with the League of Women Voters over the last year. As you might recall, a year ago, the League of Women Voters and Joan Wagner approached the commission about expanding weekend voting or looking at options such as the library or other public buildings for weekend voting. In talking with the elections commissioner, his concern was the cost and the feasibility of moving the equipment and the securability of moving the equipment to and from. Next week for the agenda on the 16th, which we do set our agendas a week in advance, I will be asking the commission to consider a letter to Elections Commissioner Howe to encourage him to allow weekend voting at the elections office on the weekend before. So we're talking about one weekend before the election on the Tuesday for a Saturday and Sunday. The Elections Commissioner sets the parameters of voting and what is acceptable or not. He's not bound by any recommendation from the commission, but I think that allowing that weekend voting, expanding it to address the issues of work, transportation, this is a compromise between the expectations that the league had started out with and the concerns that the election commissioner have. And I think that it is a compromise between the two to expand voting. And we should always do everything we can as elected officials to promote and expand voting. But I will be placing that on the agenda for the 16th with your acceptance. So,
Commissioner Ripa.
Well, I did attend Momentum 2022's, it was billed as the Turning Point. It was also billed as the Community Living Room Conversation. There were hundreds of people there. I don't know how that relates to my living room. But anyway, it was very well attended. It was a good event. And it was just a good event to build pride in the community and the city. So I thought it was a good event. I also attended the Mid-Kansas River Watershed Restoration Protection Strategy meeting that they had in a little place called Red Rock Ranch. It's up by Soldier, Kansas. And a lot of people probably don't know what the Kansas River Watershed organization does, but they're concerned with promoting the management of watersheds. And you say, well, what good does that do? Well, it does affect us because they're looking at things like how much sediment goes into the water, which goes to our drinking water, and also bacteria. And so a lot of their projects are based around reducing the runoff of sediments into the watersheds and bacteria. So that does affect us, and it's an important function that they do. I also attended the Northeast Kansas officials meeting in Emporia last week, and we had a number of our staff there, and it was a good organization. It was good to talk to other county commissioners, since we're not really allowed to talk to each other except for our meetings. It was good to talk to other county commissioners and to hear some of the same problems that we have, and we were able to discuss that. So I thought that was a good event as well. That's it.
Very good. Thank you for the report. Yes, we do have a JADO meeting, and there are some important items on that. I hope people will attend that meeting. It will be Wednesday at 6 o'clock in City Council chambers. And yes, I am excited about it. Next item, please.
Item 6, executive session.
There's not a need for an executive session. We're officially adjourned. Thank you for attending today.